This is Transport BT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome to Transport BT podcast, part of the BT Correspondence podcast family. This is your host, Derryn Wong. Now, missiles are flying, airports are closed, and one of the most important sea lanes in the world is blocked by not one, but two powers. Oil and fuel prices are going through the roof. And let's not forget a capricious US administration that does not seem to run on logic. Now, I'm really tired of the term unprecedented times, but it's still true. And for all the craziness and market chaos going around, there is one industry that deals with this sort of thing on a monthly, if not a weekly basis, and whose entire job is working through and around the chaos. And I'm talking, of course, about logistics. Is the Iran war really the most dangerous time for business we've had in recent history, or is it just another day at work? And what can business owners and professionals learn from all this? So I've got my good friend here today who knows this inside out. It's Eric Tan, Managing Director of FedEx Express Singapore. Hey, Eric, how are you doing?
Derryn, thank you for the opportunity.
Tell the audience about yourself and your experience in logistics first.
So I've been around the block for a while. Currently, I'm running the Singapore business. And Singapore is also our location for our South Pacific Regional Hub.
What is your day-to-day job?
No 2 days are the same. Spend time with the team to get a pulse of the ground. A lot of my time I spend in meetings, discussions, planning, strategizing. Lots going on these last several months now, keeping the entire industry busy. It is more or less just another day in the office for us, right? Despite of the disruptions. And disruption isn't quite new to us, Derryn, as you would know. Over the many years, be it pandemic or geopolitical tensions or major supply chain shocks, me and my colleagues in this industry, I think we all have to operate through uncertainty, and that's just part and parcel of that job.
But we're not trying to make light of things. In logistics, and especially your line of work, how do you guys deal with it?
Yeah, so at FedEx, I think we've been doing this for 53 years globally. Huge network and running that with a fleet of about 700 aircraft. So we've seen a wide range of disruptions, and I think more importantly, over the years, we've learned not just how to navigate them, but how to help our customers navigate as well. We always do want to be prepared, but certain things like when COVID happens, nobody has that in their playbook as part of the contingency plan, right? So that kind of caught a lot of people off guard. We have deliberately over the years built resilience into our network, be it through flexibility in how we route our shipments, to reinforcing our operational discipline, reinforcing our ability to adapt quickly while maintaining that level of consistency and service expected of us.
In the recent past few years, we've had COVID, we've had the Ukraine crisis, we've had the blockage of the Suez Canal. What do you think is different about this time with the Iran situation?
What's really different in recent years is how much more we have that advanced tools at our disposal, right? As you can imagine, we are leveraging a lot on data, AI, and digital capabilities. And that gives us a real-time visibility and give us that ability to respond much more dynamically than before. However, in this particular situation, this Iran crisis, I think what we're seeing now is actually that it is very direct, it is very immediate impact on the entire global energy market. That impact flows through the entire economy really quickly internationally. So we are also obviously witnessing global fuel price hike, right? And Singapore is obviously not spared. Fuel is embedded heavily across our aviation network, our ground transportation, our logistics network. So the impact is huge and everywhere.
So that's the energy side, right?
Yeah.
But you guys operate a huge fleet of planes, and you guys move things everywhere. So have the cost affected you guys? And how do you deal with that? How do you pass it on to clients or?
So definitely, we are seeing increase in the cost of operating. I think that's for sure, right? We continue to focus on building more flexible, data-driven supply chains and investing in digital capabilities that improve visibility and responsiveness across our entire network.
Can you give me an example of how that works? Last time you guys didn't have these tools, and how does it really physically affect?
Yeah, I think one of the most immediate pressures, right, is energy volatility and the fuel cost. And as a business, we always continue to update ensure that our network is operating at the most efficient manner. So, for example, Singapore is our home for our South Pacific Regional Hub. So we continue to leverage on that as a gateway to the entire South Pacific region. To date, about 30% of our ground delivery fleet in Singapore is already electrified. Our South Pacific hub, where I am based at, the entire facility is actually solar panel. Right. So these are some of the ways that we have been embarking on this to go into sustainability, to help the environment, as well as to help us to address this ever-rising, increasing cost of doing business.
Now that a lot of the Middle Eastern aviation hubs are closed to traffic, or at least have very little traffic, how does that impact the global flow of air cargo? Because you guys fly everything everywhere. You surely have an eye on this, right?
This impact about disruption in terms of airspace and routing in several parts of Middle East. And Middle East, for that matter, is an important transit corridor for the global air freight. When airspace becomes restricted or certain hubs are constrained, it really affects how aircrafts are routed across the entire network. In practical terms, right, this can mean longer flight paths, increased fuel burn, right, adjusted schedules, and customers' shipments could be affected in terms of the transit time, right? As a logistics player with a global network, so our response is actually very operational. We continuously monitor conditions and adjust routing in real time, including using alternative gateways when necessary, redistributing capacity across our global network as and when needed. And for sure, the priority is to maintain continuity of service and ensure that shipments keep moving, even when specific corridors are constrained. Because we know, and one of the main lessons we learned from the COVID days is that we need to continue to facilitate trade globally, despite of the whatever situations, and keep businesses and economies running, despite all these pressures and constraints.
So you guys direct it to more of the Asian hubs? Because I hear that the Asian hubs are getting a lot more traffic now.
Yeah.
Your experience?
Yes. In Asia Pacific, our biggest hub is Guangzhou, China. And we have a South Pacific regional hub right here in Singapore, and in the North Pacific region in Osaka. So these are the key hubs and gateways for us to connect Asia, shipments in and out of Asia to the rest of the world.
If traffic can't go somewhere, it has to go somewhere else, right? That's how you guys manage the network.
Yeah, so I think that's the advantage that we have as a business when we operate a large fleet of 700 aircraft enabled by our hub and spoke systems. And we do have a lot of hub facilities worldwide. And the three examples I've given are just for Asia alone.
So before the fighting started, where would have the packages gone? They would have gone to the Middle East or gone straight to Europe? And how do you decide, actually?
This is pretty dynamic, right? A lot of factors comes into consideration as part of that planning in terms of flight routing, based on efficiency, based on the best flight path, based on seasonality, based on demand and capacity. So we have a huge team that does that on a daily basis. We are striking that delicate balance, right, in terms of managing our capacity versus the demand. When we launch a flight, we want that flight to be full, right? Naturally.
I mean, one of the things that really sticks with me is that when I visited you guys at the Chieh hub, the plane comes right up to the warehouse. It's one of the few places where...
Literally at the doorstep.
Yeah, literally at the doorstep. It's really cool. When do you decide how you're going to load that plane? Is that days before or...
Yeah, so we have a team that plans in terms of the weight and balancing and the loading of the aircraft. A lot of considering factors, right? The product type, the service type that the customers opt for, what is the payload of the plane, how much that plane could take on, and essentially managing our customers' expectations and giving them the service that they have paid for.
And what kind of timeline are you guys looking at?
It takes place a few hours before the flight time. So, for example, if a flight departs at a certain hour, about 45 minutes the flight is scheduled to take off, well, we have already done everything and closed the flight. So literally, it's up to the last couple hours.
Oh, cool. Right now, we're going to go for our break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with Eric Tan, Managing Director of FedEx Express Singapore, on how they are dealing with the fallout from the Iran crisis.
Good conversations start with the right questions. This season, those questions are about us. The people, the policies, the forces shaping all of us. Lens on Singapore with Claressa Monteiro. Back in May. Powered by the journalism of the Business Times. On YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, back to Transport BT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Okay, now you're back to Transport BT. We're with Eric Tan, Managing Director of FedEx Express Singapore. And we're going to talk about how businesses can learn from logistics players in terms of agility and dealing with crisis. Eric, FedEx obviously has its finger on the pulse. This is daily for you guys. You watch the planes fly, you see the cargo routing all across the road. So far for the Iran crisis, what has the real effects been for you guys and your clients?
Naturally, customers are getting a little bit antsy and worried and anxious, right? Hey, can we still ship via FedEx? Will I still get my shipments to my Middle East end customers on time, right? So I think as a service provider, our job is to render the necessary support. Our core commitment to be on-time performance and provide end-to-end visibility remains unchanged. So the network is designed to flex up and down. Even when conditions shift, we need to ensure that as a service provider, we continue to move shipments through alternative routes and capacity options. So at a higher level, the goal is really simple, right? Keep shipments moving predictably, even when environment is less than predictable. A lot of our customers, whether they are the big boy MNCs or the small SMEs, they depend on us as a trusted and dependable service provider to keep their business going. So that's exactly what we are here to do.
And you said the network scales up or down. When it goes down, what actually happens? I don't know, park some plane somewhere or...
We don't typically have to do that. We had to do that, a little bit of that during early COVID days, right? But not anymore, not at the current situation. It is more gearing towards flexing up, rather, increasing our capacity. So despite having our own fleet of about 700 aircraft, we do leverage a lot on what we say whitetail, commercial line haul belly space. So we do also purchase belly space from passenger airlines, for example, Singapore Airlines, to complement and supplement our own capacity. That happens simultaneously.
And that happens quite often now.
Yeah, that has always been our operating model, to complement and to supplement our purple tail, right? So our own fleet, we call them purple tail.
The FedEx tail, right? Literally.
That's right. Literally painted purple.
So you guys decide, okay, this plane is full. We need some extra capacity from, say, SIA. You send the container to them, and when it lands, where does it go?
That is being planned on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis because seasonality, right? For example, year-end seasonality, that is a peak season for the entire company globally, historically, every year, right? Where people send a lot of Christmas presents around the world for their family and loved ones. Over the last 10 years, we've also started with the 10-10, right? And then now it becomes the 9-9, 11-11, Black Friday. And of course, for our manufacturing customers, they do have a typical and regular quarter-end surges, and March and June and September and December. So those are times where you see a little bit of a increase in demand as well. That really necessitates us to stay close to our customers and work with them towards providing them the necessary capacity to meet their expected demands.
That's really all down to planning and all down to having different options.
Right. That happens on a quarterly, on a monthly, on a weekly, and on a daily basis, right down to that kind of minute details and levels.
You know what? When I spoke to you about a year ago, FedEx was going big on freight forwarding, cold chain, specialized handling solutions. Has the war changed any of that, or are you guys still running just as per normal?
Those focus areas still are the same. Even with the ongoing geopolitical and supply chain disruptions, our strategy remains consistent, right? And in many ways, these conditions have, in fact, reinforced the need for even more integrated logistics solutions. What we are seeing actually is a continued strong demand from customers who are dealing with more complex supply chains today versus before. Right, so they are increasingly looking for reliability, visibility, end-to-end solutions rather than a standalone transportation services.
Can you explain what that means? What are the differences between the two things?
So, for example, where we are seeing in terms of a strong momentum, using AI and data infrastructure as an example, very strong momentum in the data center investments across the entire Southeast Asia, with Indonesia emerging as one of the region's most significant hubs. along with Johor Bahru as well, right? And these are really and largely supported by a large digital population, improved energy infrastructure, and strong government backing for these countries to become a digital economy. We are positioning FedEx as a preferred solutions provider for hyperscalers where precision, reliability, and time-definite logistics are very critical. For example, e-commerce growth continues to boom across the entire world globally and certainly in Asia and Southeast Asia. For e-commerce sector, we are no longer just moving the shipments. In fact, we are increasingly embedding ourselves more deeply into the customer's ecosystem, moving beyond traditional B2C model, right, into a slightly different B2B2C approach. So working more closely with platforms, partners, as well as marketplaces to enable cross-border growth in a more integrated way. So I think it's getting a little bit more complex, if you would. For every online purchase, actually, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
And, within Asia, has the traffic still been very strong? Or
Yes, indeed. We continue to see strong growth in this segment or sector of e-commerce.
what kind of lessons do you think business owners can learn from you guys, FedEx? How do you be more flexible and resilient?
If there is just one consistent lesson from navigating crisis over the years, right, be it SARS or COVID, supply chain disruptions, I think it is that resilience is not built into the moment of crisis, but actually long before it happens. We are always looking for ways to make our operations more effective, more cost efficient, more productive, and we want to have contingency plans into the playbook, but you can always plan so much, right? But when COVID hits, nobody really anticipated it. So you have to really be ready to adapt and sometimes make quick adjustments on the fly, right? I think aside to that, being prepared to have that discipline to practice. So for example, it comes from continuously stress testing our networks, building upon redundancy, ensuring end-to-end visibility across supply chain before that much dreaded disruption takes place.
Yeah. It almost sounds like you're saying don't be comfortable.
Even when things are smooth, I think we always have to imagine and think of and be prepared, right, for what could potentially come next. The world that we live in is a very different place from 10, 15, 20 years ago where things are fairly stable. So the world is such a dynamic place today, and every 1 or 2 years, things are very different already. There's really no room for us to just sit back and enjoy the status quo and then just assume that things will be the same.
Just now you said the resilience is built years before COVID, not just the event happens, right? Is there an example from FedEx that you have? Like how you guys built that resilience?
Through experience, through going through crisis, be it internally caused or external led, through that years of experience, that we take on the learnings and improve our playbook, if you would, right? And improve the way that we run our business. There's a lot of lessons to be had over the course of the last 40, 50 years that we are in business. When something happens in one country, one region, we make sure that as much as possible, we cascade it, we share it, so that it can be a learning for another location, right? So that when a certain incident takes place in another location, people know how to react and not to make the same kind of mistakes, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
That's it for Transport BT this week. Next week on BT Correspondence, we have an episode on how technology is shaping the property space. So join senior correspondent Leslie Yee for Property BT on that. This episode was produced by Howie Lim and Chieh together with our editor, Claressa Monteiro, and it was written and presented by me. Thank you for listening. I'm Derryn Wong, signing out.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts. Or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.